the baby cried. And Marie, her kind-hearted face lighted up with maternal concern, went to the baby. Every step she took was full of affection and tenderness, as if she were the child's surest support. She touched him tenderly, softly whispering soothing words as his cries subsided, giving way to the soft sounds of the child's laughter. At this moment, a young gentleman came up to them, looking at Marie with an astonishment that bore a share of intrigue. He greeted her with youthful gaiety, insinuating that if she had expressed her feelings in this way in the palace, she would have been immediately arrested for high treason. Marie, however, met his joke only with a cheerful smile, as if the directness of her communication was unaffected by her fear of authority. "There are only 3 of us in this room," she said, as if to emphasize that their small, cozy space had no place for formalities and state anxiety. Her response was infused with a slight dose of boldness and integrity, creating an environment where rules are their own and restrictions lose their power. Marie's eyes gleamed with admiration as she realized how charming the young gentleman was. Her heart might have responded to the enticing mixture of his cheerful directness and noble refinement. At that moment, as if under the influence of a sudden impulse of generosity, she offered to hold the infant for him, that she might rest herself. The man seemed happy to take on this responsibility, but his attempt was far from masterful. His arm stretched forward, holding the infant clumsily, as if he was facing this challenge for the first time. Marie held back a smile as she watched his clumsy attempts, and perhaps thought that even that awkwardness had its own unique charm. Her eyes flashed with the cheerful realization that the moment was not only a challenge for the Lord, but also an involuntary comic scene filled with light laughter. The young gentleman took the child in his arms and confessed that it can be difficult for him to control his powers, especially when he is involved in such tender moments. It was as if a storm of energy instantly swept over him, and he finally pressed the infant to his breast. Marie watched this scene, mixed with a delicate struggle of strength mixed with tenderness. At this time, a reflection flashed through her mind. She could not help but question how much responsibility this young gentleman had taken on. After all, despite his youth and charm, he was a minister, carrying on his shoulders the responsibility for important decisions and actions in the state. Marie might have glimpsed how difficult it could be to balance the role of leader with unexpected, touching moments like this. In an instant, Marie, a 21st century resident, suddenly opened her eyes for the first time, finding herself in a world that seemed to have been torn from the pages of a novel. All around her were landscapes filled with magic and mystery, as if she had entered a sacred space. This transition from reality to the magical world felt like an incredible adventure, where the boundaries between the worlds merged into a single splendor. The obviousness of this transition was the moment when her gaze met the new face of reality. In front of her lay an infant radiating an unprecedented purity, as if an angel himself had been brought down into the world. This impression of unearthly purity and perfection created an atmosphere full of mystery and delight. Marie felt that she had stepped into a world where every moment was imbued with magic, and her heart was filled with an unknown but precious joy. Marie, gazing intently at the infant, could not help but be struck by the fact that its appearance was so ordinarily familiar. Her hand slid lightly over his cheek, and she felt the same tenderness that every newborn gives a loving mother. In that moment of magical transition, her gaze was piercingly realistic, revealing to her the amazing truth of this baby's existence. Suddenly, a maid entered the room, her expression a look of deep surprise. When she saw that the baby did not make a sound despite Marie's touch, she hurried to confirm that the baby was fine. Her eyes showed surprise and some amazement at what was happening. After a brief check, the maid left Marie with the baby, asking her to look after the baby named Brielle. This unexpected turn of events added an air of mystery, as if Marie had some responsibility that she knew nothing about yet. Marie looked at the infant named Brielle and felt past and present intertwined in a strange pattern of fate. The name had been familiar to her long before she had become part of this mysterious world. Memories of Brielle carried echoes of her previous life, at times when Marie was but a short story reader. Marie loved children, and her passion for this feeling was so strong that she became a kindergarten teacher. In her previous life, she not only cared for children in the real world, but also vacationed in the worlds of imagination, reading novels and short stories. Brielle, like all the characters in these stories, became part of her inner world, her personal memories. Now, faced with the real Brielle, she realized that this connection carried something deeper and more mysterious. As if weaving through time, her own love for her children had brought her to this moment, where she became part of a story she had once read before her previous death. A sudden flash of realization swept over Marie like a lightning strike on a quiet night. She remembered the ominous prediction written in the plot of the novel to which she belonged, the role that should have been hers as a character. Her fate on the face of it was sealed, to kill the infant she was now with. Excitement and indignation ran high, like dark shadows dragging her down into an abyss of boundless hardship. Despair seized the girl, piercing her heart with ominous needles of helplessness. In her eyes flickered the stormy emotions of doubt, fear, indignation. She, who had cared for children in her previous life, could not reconcile herself to the idea that she was destined to be their source of pain. However, like a fog obscuring the road home, thoughts of returning to her world flickered in her thoughts. She began to make plans, looking for a way out, but remained in the shadows of ignorance, not knowing how she found herself inside this novel. Marie found herself tangled in the tangles of her destiny, where each step forward seemed even more obscure and impenetrable. Unexpected sounds from Brielle pierced the air, as if reminding Marie of the present reality she was in. The infant whose existence had prompted her heroic decision made a cute squeak, drawing her attention. It was the sound of pure, childlike joy, giving her the strength to push away the stupefying shadows of despair. Consciousness was pierced by a looming reality. Her intended purpose, embedded in the plot of the novella, suggested a tragic outcome for the infant. In light of this, Marie felt her heart clench with resentment and pain. She decided that she would not allow this terrible prediction to be fulfilled, even if it required her to sacrifice herself. A fire of determination lit up in her eyes. She promised herself that she would always stand up for this angelic child, even if her own fate hung in the balance. Perhaps it was this act of selfless defense that was the reason for her rebirth into Marie's body. In this world, she sensed a mission she was ready to fulfill, even if her own path to freedom remained murky and mysterious. That day, imbued with an incredible resolve, Marie realized the true purpose of her arrival in this world that had broken the routine of her previous life. Over the next 3 months, she abandoned the idea of returning to her homeworld and instead devoted herself entirely to caring for Brielle. Her days were filled with care, tenderness, and the sound of infant laughter. Marie became not only the guardian of this angelic child, but also his source of light and warmth. She immersed herself in the world of her parents, becoming a support and comfort to Brielle. Her eyes sparkled with a love unknown to the power that had brought her here. Thus, in her unfamiliar shoulder, Marie found meaning not in fighting the plot of the novel, but in caring for a little angel who was perhaps the key to unlocking her own mysterious destiny. Those 3 months were a time full of warmth, love, and priceless moments where Marie shone as the guardian of this baby's happiness in her new, magical world. Marie, full of care for little Brielle, harbored a fond wish that the parents of this angelic infant could witness him growing up, laughing and enjoying life's first steps. However, life shattered her illusions, a catastrophe that deprived the child of his biological parents, leaving her the only support for Brielle. At that moment, the Count, who had become the baby's new guardian, stepped into his life. Through Marie's incomparable kindness and mercy, she was able to not only preserve Brielle's life, but also mitigate the bereavement of his new family. This act of kindness had an effect not only on the infant, but also on the Count himself, who was immersed in the shadow of loss. A childlike joy now resounded in his home, and Marie's gratitude pierced his heart, illuminating the dark corners that had long been hidden in his memory. Thus Marie, despite her own difficulties and mysterious fate, became not only Brielle's protector, but also the light that illuminated the paths to happiness, both in the house and in the hearts of those who became her new family. Marie, immersed in her care for little Brielle, began to give him exercises to support his first steps towards independence. Her warm hands, full of love and care, guided the baby's hands, helping him to explore the world that had just opened up to him. One day, however, when the Count first witnessed this activity, his mind was caught in the icy fingers of suspicion. A momentary spark of displeasure passed through his eyes, and then he even thought that Marie was trying to harm the infant. The tension reached its peak as the Count drew his blade and set it up at the very nape of Marie's neck. At that moment, Marie's fate seemed as dark and heavy as a stone. However, like a true heroine, she took her fate in hand. With eyes filled with determination and serenity, she managed to calm the Count and told him of the value of these exercises for the health and future of the baby. Her words penetrated the Count's heart, and the ice of his suspicions began to melt under the warm influence of understanding and acceptance. In this way, Marie not only continued her care for the baby, but also left an incredible mark on the heart of the man who initially saw her as a threat. A surge of memories filled Marie's mind like a flood of vivid recollections. At that moment, as she recalled that ill-fated episode with the Count, baby Brielle in his crib was persistently exploring the boundaries of his little universe. With surprising persistence, he was doing the exercises Marie had given him. Little Brielle may not have realized the difficulties that awaited him along the way, but his cheerful movements were like a joyful response to the challenges he and Marie had overcome together. This little world of play and exercise reflected not only the infant's physical strength, but also a symbol of his steadfastness and ability to overcome difficulties. Marie's eyes filled with gratitude and love, seeing the baby laboring as if to say, "Look what I can do." This moment was a continuation of their joint efforts, reminding her that care and love always find a way to overcome any difficulty. Under the shadow of the majestic vaults and luxurious interiors, Marie strolled with her baby in her arms, feeling the warm touch of the ancient walls. The Count entered the stately building like an inviolable master, arousing the solemn adoration of the servants. At the instant that the Count, raising his arms, sought to embrace his nephew, Marie, like a guardian of the family welfare, turned away, addressing the Count, demanding that he wash his hands before touching the precious infant. In response to this unusual request, the servants, already accustomed to Marie's unconventional behavior, became mere silent witnesses, remaining silent in the Count's face. The Count, though expressing astonishment at the unusual scene, still submitted to this condition. In a building where every wall seemed imbued with history and power, Marie continued to be the guardian of her principles, emphasizing her steadfastness in the safety and care of the infant. The merry sounds of children's laughter filled the room as Marie amused herself and Brielle by playing fun games. At that moment, slightly damp from water droplets, the Count entered. His haste, directly related to his impatience to see his nephew, made him forget to wipe himself after washing. The Count's face showed clear signs that he had left his office abruptly, eager to see the baby as soon as possible. Even though he was wet with water droplets, the Count did not seem to care about his appearance, so much absorbed in the anticipation of the happy moment when he would be able to stroke the cheek of his beloved nephew again. Marie, distracted for the first time from playing with the baby, met the Count's gaze. In that moment, filled with fleeting chaos and laughter, the Count, like a child among his toys, stepped into the world of care and joy that he and Marie had created for the young heir. Attentive to the Count's distress, Marie, determined to support him in the expression of his emotions, offered to have fun and play hide-and-seek with the baby. But the Count, a man unaccustomed to such childish amusements and having difficulty in expressing his feelings, found himself at an impasse. To help him understand and enjoy this simple but joyful activity, Marie decided to demonstrate how to play hide-and-seek. She covered her face with her hands in front of the baby, creating a kind of screen, and then opened her hands, shouting various sounds, filling the air with fun and playfulness. The Count, watching this unusual performance, was dumbfounded. He was about to assume a role which he considered too frivolous for his position. But in his eyes flashed an echo of surprise and perhaps even intrigue at the new, uncharted experience. Thus, at that moment, It was as if the great Count found himself on the edge of a child's magical land, and Marie opened the door for him to a sense of selfless joy and exhilaration. The Count's mind was still reeling from the stern, haughty expressions with which he had reprimanded his subordinates for the shortcomings in their denunciations a few hours ago. Now he found himself in an entirely different reality, where childish games were becoming part of his day. Within his strong but hidden figure now lived a childish joy, and he was forced to accept this incredible turn of fate. Confused but ready to overcome himself, the Count took the first step into this world of games. Covering his face with his hands, he created a temporary shelter, hiding his imperious figure under a playful charm. Then, with a sound funny to a child, he opened his arms, allowing the child to enjoy the wonders of a simple but fun game. A sudden burst of childish laughter filled the room. The Count, surprised to find the baby shining with pleasure, asked Marie if she had seen the baby smiling. In his eyes he read amusement and wonder, and perhaps some embarrassment at the unexpected pleasure. He seemed interested in exploring new facets of the happiness that the kind and caring Marie was bringing to their home. Marie, leaning over the sincere emotion, wondered how the magic of the game could bring the Count and little Brielle together. Glimmers of childlike joy flashed in her eyes, passing from the Count's heart to his little nephew's. This was something more important than mere entertainment. It was the key to a new world where the overbearing Count was becoming a caring uncle. Her desire was simple and lofty, to protect and care for Brielle. Marie's determination reinforced her determination to create a world full of love and care for the baby. She saw this as her mission, and her every step was directed toward bringing harmony and warmth to the hearts of the baby and the Count. In her gaze was a willingness to overcome any hardship to ensure Brielle the selfless happiness that every child deserved. Thus, Marie became not only a protector, but also a guide on this bright path where childhood and caring love meet. Sometime later, at this point in the magic class, when Brielle was on her way to walking on her own, a little girl burst into the room, full of energy and determination. Her sudden appearance added extra liveliness to the atmosphere. "I want to play with you too, Marie," she exclaimed, and her joyful smile sparkled like a bright star. But misfortune came unexpectedly. In her whirlwind of excitement, the girl inadvertently shoved Brielle, who lost his balance and began to fall. Marie's instant reaction took over, and she stretched out her arms, trying to catch the baby, who dreamed of walking on his own. At that moment, the room erupted in tense moments, with a mixture of the desire to hold on and the joyous excitement of a new game. Marie, as if in slow motion, reached for Brielle, but it seemed her arms were a second too short. That's where Ellie stepped in, skillfully stepping up so that the boy fell right into her caring arms. Thanks to her swiftness, Brielle snapped off without meeting the cold floor, and his fall was safe. Marie, feeling the warm form of her baby in her arms, was relieved. Worry for his well-being was instantly replaced by joy that he was unharmed. Fate had favored it, and at that moment, Marie once again embraced Brielle, cradling him against her chest. On turning to Ellie to see how she was feeling, the little girl tensed as if expecting a storm of displeasure. Her eyes expressed concern, and she seemed ready to apologize or blame herself for a possible accident. At that moment, as the evening sun caressingly colored their hair with golden hues, Marie took Ellie's hand. She didn't utter a word, but her actions spoke of care and tenderness. Smiling affectionately, she stroked the girl's soft hair, quietly reminding her of the importance of caution on this unpredictable path. Allie, initially expecting stern admonitions and reproaches, felt something new, the touch of a caring hand that seemed to create a warm refuge in this fantasy world. Marie, maintaining a delicate balance between gentleness and firmness, made Ellie feel like an important part of her life, and a quiet but special routine began. Marie, like a skilled keeper of secrets, introduced the sounds of children's laughter and rainbow moments into her caring world. She taught Allie the secrets of this magical world, where miracles became part of everyday life, and every moment could bring something wonderful. Filling their days with lessons and games, Marie became not only a teacher, but also a guide to a world of wonder where reality was intertwined with magic. Her eyes shimmered with love for these children's hearts, And Ellie, in turn, began to reciprocate that tenderness with her trust and the ease of children's smiles. The evenings of their unusual home were filled with warmth and comfort. Marie, well aware of her unusual role in the lives of Brielle and Ellie, weaved her caring gestures to create a small family happiness in this wonderful corner of the magical world. And perhaps it was here, in this intertwining of destinies, that not only miracles were born but also true, incredible love. The warm light of the sunset enveloped the Count's castle, creating an atmosphere of mystery and warmth. Ellie, Marie's sister, proved to be an integral part of this marvelous story. Her influence proved to be very significant, helping the girl to accept Marie into her family, questioning stereotypes and prejudices. When Marie came into their lives, Ellie immediately realized that the sister she had been given was an extraordinary person. She became not only a support for Marie, but also a bridge between her and the Count, helping to overcome initial misunderstandings and create a warm family atmosphere. It was inevitable that the role of mother to the infant Brielle presented challenges. However, this is where Erin, a kind and caring woman who, as the mother of her own child, took on the responsibility of feeding Brielle, enters the scene. But, as is often the case, caring for two children required a great deal of effort, and Erin faced challenges in caring for Brielle. At this point, Marie, through her experience in raising a younger sibling, stepped into the scene. In her hands, Brielle found not only a nanny, but also someone willing to offer him care, love, and support. Faced with the difficulties of combining maternal duties with her own family, Marie delicately and tenderly took on the care of the infant. At first, Brielle had disliked Marie, and sometimes even feared her. Glances full of disgust and tears melting under the beds of his small eyes were common whenever they crossed paths. Marie, steadfastly enduring these moments, did not lose her patience. She knew she had a long way to go in overcoming the negative feelings Brielle had for her. But at that particular moment, when the decision to change nannies seemed inevitable, something inside Marie began to change. Like a rebirth, a transformation of the soul, she became completely different. In the instant that Marie took on a new look and essence, something in her eyes may have lit up with the magic of change. It was at that very moment that Brielle turned his gaze to her and saw something completely new, and in those eyes, previously filled with fear and disgust, he found softness and warmth. The new Marie had become a magnet for his attention, and now, instead of tears and cries, the light of joyful recognition flashed in Brielle's eyes. The relationship between them steadily began to change. Where there had been animosity, there was hope. Where there had been tears, a smile blossomed. In that moment, as Marie was transformed in body and soul, she brought a new, bright chord into Brielle's life. Thus, in the face of change, replacing the old story of misunderstanding, they began to write their own chapter, where every look, every smile of Marie became for Brielle a source of joy and unconditional love. In a twist of fate, Marie and Ellie witnessed a delightful moment, Brielle's first tentative but important steps. They watched with love and admiration as the baby, leaning on his tiny feet, conquered the world with his small steps. Marie and Ellie formed an unwavering union on this exciting journey. Together, they stood by each other's side, supporting each other, reveling in the sweet moments when Brielle bravely took his first steps into an uncharted world. These girls, united by care and love like guardians of happiness, created a protective wing around him. With each new baby step, joy and admiration grew in their hearts. Marie, seeing Brielle as a kind of miracle, and Ellie, seeing her own brother in this wonderful process, shared these exciting moments, creating an environment filled with warmth and laughter. And so, together they lived these precious moments of childhood, enjoying each step as if they were part of the very harmony of this extraordinary world. Marie and Ellie, witnesses of small miracles, contributed to this amazing journey, where each step of Brielle became a precious revelation in this intertwining of destinies. 8-month-old Brielle, as a little explorer, began to actively conquer the world by crawling, overcoming every inch of his little kingdom. His exciting adventures sometimes took him to the most unexpected corners, where every object became an interesting discovery. Every time Marie met his little exploits with a glance, she couldn't resist the excitement and wonder. These moments transformed her routine into exceptional moments. So, as he crawled again and again, overcoming his little obstacles, a sense of pride and incredible tenderness grew in her heart. And so, in one of these magical moments, Marie decided to put aside her worries to immerse herself in the gentle world of little Brielle's research. She gently took him in her arms, feeling the energy of his activity beneath her fingers, and hugged him, as if embodying the invisible bond that united them. This gesture, this spontaneous embrace, was not just an act of love and care, but a moment that captured the beauty and joy of Brielle's international stage of growth. In that moment, he became not only a baby, but a little hero conquering his own corner in this wonderful world. And Marie, cradling him in her arms, seemed to absorb his every laugh, rejoicing in every step that led him to new adventures. Throughout the month, Brielle's magical growth felt like a miracle. Not long ago, he was just learning to stand, and now, with wonder and pride, Marie watched him nimbly shuffle his feet as he strode to new heights. These moments were evidence of his rapid progress. Marie's gaze, now filled with pride and tenderness, roamed over the little miracle growing right before her eyes. She wondered about the future, seeing in his small actions the promise of a beautiful and exciting way forward. Every step he took, every little accomplishment he made, seemed to magically weave a future portrait of a great man. This thought inevitably filled her imagination with visions of a stately and wise man like the Count, Brielle's uncle. At that moment, Marie could imagine Brielle growing up under her caring gaze and becoming not only physically strong, but also possessing a spirit full of determination and intelligence like his famous relative. Thus, Marie's view of little Brielle was not only a glimpse into the present, but also into a future full of possibilities and prospects. In that moment, she felt that her care and love were the keys to his becoming something great and unique in this magical world. That evening, under the blanket of a peaceful sunset, the Count's castle came alive with the arrival of its owner. The Count, returning home, immediately addressed his servant with a question about Brielle. The words that the infant was asleep dimmed his gaze, and at the same moment a shadow of sadness passed over his face. The Earl turned to Marie, as if he wanted to hear hopeful news from her lips. He asked how Brielle was feeling, and there was a mysterious worry in his voice. Marie, glowing with happiness in response, shared that all was well, that Brielle was feeling fine. But a puzzling conjecture rose in her mind. Why did the Count, who was in such a hurry to get home, seem so sad? The Count, who was standing in front of Marie with that mysterious look, suddenly became the image of a mysterious investigation. There was a realization in her gaze that perhaps the meeting with Brielle meant much more to the Count than she had realized. His sadness, as if emphasizing an inner uneasiness, became an unknowable puzzle in this story, whose threads began to intertwine that evening, filling his homecoming with mystery and unspoken emotions. Marie, like a magician, offered the Count a glimpse of the world that was unfolding in the quiet, dark room where the infant Brielle slept peacefully. The suggestion of this simple woman, who concealed within herself a miraculous creative power, shone before the Count like a jewel in the darkness. And so, in a few moments, they stood in that cozy room where Brielle's quiet sleep filled the air with an invisible tenderness. The Count's gaze, turned toward the little sleeping creature, lit up like a star in the night sky. Marie, like an artist presenting his work, scrutinized his reaction with a smile. In the silence of the room, the Count noted that the child seemed to have lost weight, but in response to his words, Marie, with a twinkle in her eyes, decided that the change in Brielle carried something special. She assured the Count that he would like this change, as if anticipating something wonderful that was just beginning to unfold. Thus, in that magical moment, under the cover of night, before Brielle fell asleep, two very different worlds, the Count's world of mystery and responsibility and Marie's world of care and warmth became intertwined, creating a unique weave of destinies and a story in which every moment promised to bring something incredible. A wave of warmth and awe enveloped the room as the Count, as if realizing that his heart could not resist such moments, decided to touch the sleeping Brielle. The sudden attempt to peer into this world of innocence and tenderness exploded the inner light in his eyes. However, In this magical moment, Marie, being the guardian of the infant's serenity, took on the role of guardian. With firmness and affection in her voice, she stopped the Count, reminding him that cold and still unwashed hands might wake Brielle. In this gentle warning sounded not only concern for the comfort of the child, but also some secret rule of this magical world, where even the smallest details could make or break harmony. Thus the Count, swooning in his intentions, looked at the sleeping baby with renewed respect and reverence. In that moment, as his hand, enchanted with warmth, remained hovering in the air, Marie and the Count witnessed a unique balance, where love and care met with care and attention, to the little miracle that slept in their charming room. The sudden realization that the Count had also lost weight pierced Marie like an inspiring light in a darkened room. She, being attentive and solicitous as the guardian of her heavenly ward's welfare, noticed the change in his appearance. The fine line along which the change traveled took on a peculiar significance in her eyes. With great delicacy and warmth in her heart, Marie decided that the Count, despite his weight loss, had only become more handsome. Her admiration was not only for his appearance, but also for his inner transformation, which gave him a special wisdom and strength. And in that moment, in a silence filled with tenderness, Marie realized that beauty is not always linked to physical changes, but is sometimes present in the way one experiences one's variables and how they are reflected in one's character. Thus her gaze, filled with awe, recognized not only the Count's new splendor, but also an inner harmony that gave his appearance even more charm. The moment the Count's gaze caught Marie's tantalizing light, she looked away embarrassed, as if caught by the magic of that evening. However, instead of putting that moment behind her, she took it as a challenge and offered to sing a lullaby to Brielle. This offer seemed to be met with a slight chuckle, for the child was already asleep. But Marie realized that the magic of the lullaby was not just in the words, but in the moment she was creating around her. So she began to sing, breathing into the air an enchanting melody that, like a magic spell, transformed an ordinary room into a place filled with mysterious magic. Every note was filled with tenderness and love, creating an atmosphere in which time seemed to slow down. The Count, overwhelmed by this incredible moment, forgot about his worries and immersed himself in the world that was being born under the sound of Marina's song. It was the moment when the lullaby became not just a song for the baby, but a magic spell permeating every corner of this warm room. The traces of sunset colored the hills under their rays like a carpet of gold as the Count approached Marie, who was carrying little Brielle in her tender arms. The Count, easily opening the curtains of time to the light, stretched out his majestic arms toward the child. The smile that played on his lips seemed to magically reflect warmth and care. The Count's fingers lightly touched Brielle's cheek, and his eyes met the baby's already erupting teeth with wonder. The incredible miracle of childhood was blossoming at that moment, and the Count could not hide his admiration for this sign of growing life. Marie watched this touching scene. Something special awoke in her heart, a mixture of pride and warmth. Her hands affectionately held the little boy, becoming a kind of bridge between the past and the present. In that moment, she felt her own memories intertwining with the new ones, creating a marvelous combination of experience and innocence. The Count was perhaps the only witness of this moment of inner rebirth. In his gaze glittered not only the satisfaction of the infant's progress, but also some unknowable realization that in this connecting scene lay something deeper, the union of different worlds in a common voyage on the stream of destiny. Sadly, the Earl reflected on how little time he had spent raising his nephew, contrary to the fact that there was nothing more precious to him than Brielle. Shadows of regret flickered in his eyes, realizing that he might be missing moments that were so important to the little one's growth. It was at that moment that Marie, as if sensing an inner pull, gently lowered Brielle onto the soft carpet. Her words rang with confidence and importance as she announced that the baby had another undiscovered talent. Brielle, barely touching the carpet with his tiny toes, began to crawl as if emphasizing his accomplishments. With a childlike delight and a steadfastness that sometimes amazed adults, the little boy sat down in front of the Count. Brielle's gaze was filled with pride, and the Count, glowing with emotion, felt his heart fill with warmth. In that moment, he realized that raising Brielle was not just a duty, but a source of joy and wonder that had remained in the shadows for so long. While the Count, with eyes full of admiration, watched Brielle, Marie inwardly deepened her thoughts about the baby's future. At this moment, as the childlike joy sparkled in Brielle's eyes, she hoped that every tomorrow would be filled with the same light and rainbow of emotions. Marie felt that the Count, witnessing these moments, would be an important reference point in the world for Brielle. Her thoughts were not only about the present, but also about the future, a time when every glance given by the Count would be a gift filled with care and support for the baby. And though she was aware of the difficulties that might arise in the way of this unusual marital union, a certainty burned in Marie's heart that with the love and care that the Count bore in his gaze, Brielle would possess happiness and confidence in her future. Marie, thrilled to be taking care of Brielle, decided to give him an unforgettable play with a variety of textures. In her caring hands, the bathtub became a kaleidoscope of experiences filled with soft algae. Surrounded by this sea of unusual sensations, the baby was immersed in a world of fun, while Marie watched his eyes sparkle with a rainbow of pure delight. At that moment, she couldn't help but think about the Earl, who seemed to be more active in laboring from home. Marie's gaze glided over the details of this variable dynamic of family life. Seeing Brielle grow up, the Count, being the caring uncle he was, did not want to miss a single moment in his maturation. She noted with amusement that the Count had become more attentive to what was going on in his house. The baby, it turns out, brings not only joy, but also change, which the Count takes with trepidation. She could feel the love and care for Brielle bringing this unusual family closer together, giving them warmth and a bright future. When the seaweed bath had reached its conclusion, Marie, holding little Brielle in her arms, invited the Count to join in the unusual activity. The cheerful drops of water played in the light, and the air was filled with laughter and joyful sounds. The Count, coming up and looking at this marvelous water world, tried to hide his emotions, but in his eyes there was something incomprehensible, mixed with amazement. This unusual bathtub was like a gateway to another dimension, where every bubble of water seemed like a small miracle. Marie, with a sense of lightness and playfulness, invited the Count to join them. His face showed confusion, despite his attempts to hide it behind an indifferent mask. Yet even through the clouded gaze, one could catch echoes of wonder and uncertain joy at this magical world they had created together. Marie, eager to provide Brielle with an amazing experience, attempted to bring him into the bath, but the Count, in his confusion, took the baby in his arms, not fully realizing what he was undertaking. Nevertheless, his curiosity was clearly visible on his face as he scrutinized what Marie was up to. Marie, feeling a responsibility to little Brielle, began to talk about how playing with different textures promotes muscle development and the expression of emotion in an infant. She affectionately explained to the Count that such play created positive experiences and had a positive effect on the child's physical and emotional well-being. In an attempt to introduce an element of fun and improve Brielle's mood, Marie cheerfully attached seaweed to his eyebrows. The baby's involuntary laughter was like music to everyone present. Seeing how cheerfully and casually the child reacted, the Count finally smoothed his troubled look and smilingly agreed to this unusual and fun experiment. Marie, standing nearby, rejoiced at this hilarious blunder. Her eyes reflected not only joy, but also an understanding of how important such moments are in the process of interacting with a child. In that moment, the bathtub became not only a place to play, but also an arena for fun family memories that will be cherished in their hearts. The baby was having a lot of fun playing with different seaweeds and splashing in the water, causing the baby's laughter to fill the entire bathroom, filling the Count and Marie with joy. In a bathtub filled with fun and joy, the gameplay became more and more interesting. Brielle, immersed in this watery world, suddenly took a sudden hit of water, creating a splash that rained down on the Count. The spontaneous moment acted as a fun surprise, diluting the rainbow textures of the bathtub. The Count, at the first moment of being struck by the water, looked a little surprised at the little player, and then burst into laughter. The drops of water played in the light like stars in the heavens, and he could not resist the mirth that the moment brought him. Marie, seeing the wet count like a magical episode from a comedy movie, was at first speechless. Her eyes opened wide, and her face expressed an incredible embarrassment, which was not supported by ordinary words. She stared at the count as if mesmerized, trying to put her thoughts in order. Suddenly, like a wave of mirth and surprise, Marie became entangled in her own legs, and like a character in a scene from an incredible comedy, she tumbled uncontrollably straight into the count's arms. Laughter and joy permeated the air like a magic spell, and at that moment they were both in an embrace of merriment and tenderness, creating a unique experience in their delightful family journey. Marie stood up hurriedly, her eyes filled with embarrassment. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Her heart was beating as if it was trying to escape from her chest. Marie's gaze happened to meet the dark eyes of the Count, who, without uttering a word, still couldn't hide his embarrassment. The Earl's reddened ears spoke of the sincerely exciting scene. Marie stepped back, apologizing, but her thoughts swirled around what had happened. Her determination to protect Brielle seemed weakened by her sudden feelings. The words she would have liked to say were stuck on the tip of her tongue, and she felt that in this awkward moment something was changing in her relationship with the Count. The silence in the room was so palpable that one could hear the whisper of the wind outside the window. The Count was silently watching the retreating Marie, and his silence seemed a mysterious veil over his real feelings. But, at the same time, the Count's flushed ears spoke their own nonverbal language. Those red hues were like frank emotional colors on the canvas of his face, a reflection of shame or excitement. Marie realized that at this moment it was not only her heart that was captive to mixed feelings. The Count, contrary to his usual equanimity, was in the same boat of wrong assumptions and unexpected emotions. There was a mysterious atmosphere in Marie's workshop, filled with the gentle rustling of fabrics and the dim light that created a cozy corner. Marie was tucked into her work, making her masterpieces, little bears and bunnies, each witnessing her masterful craftsmanship. Ellie, her restless sister, wandered around the workshop, peering at every seam and bulkhead. Suddenly, full of questions, she stopped and couldn't help her curiosity. "What do you do, sis?" she asked, her eyes gleaming with interest. With a slight smile, Marie replied that she made toys, and magical characters were born in her hands. But there was sadness in Ellie's voice when she asked if the masterpieces would be for Brielle. Marie, undaunted by her kindness, assured her sister that the bear would indeed be given to the infant. Ellie, however, took a fleeting glance at the bunny beside her and asked a question that touched the strings of her own soul. "What's going to happen to that bunny?" she asked, suddenly frozen in anticipation of the answer. Marie, undaunted by her kindness, confirmed that the bunny was already being sewn for Ellie, but that the process was taking longer because of the size of the toy. She glanced at her sister with a questioning look, asking if she was willing to wait. In response, Ellie, with an enthusiastic wave of her head, expressed her willingness to wait, giving her sister a comforting and warm look. Marie, looking at her energetic sister, couldn't help but be captivated. Ellie, despite her age, still possessed a childlike enthusiasm and curiosity. With a warm glance, Marie noted that some character traits seem to persist in us throughout our lives. Suddenly, as if by a magic gust of wind, an image of the dilapidated house where she and her brother and sister had struggled with adversity appeared in her mind. Rags instead of clothes, no luxuries and no talk of toys. That's what that house was like. Marie struggled to create the best conditions for her loved ones, working for a salary from the Count. Although they could not afford the luxury of toys, the heaviest burden was to be left in that cabin all alone. In the silence of her memories, Marie felt her heart clench with pain for her brother and sister, who remained in that sullen space waiting for her return. Though she had done her best to make their lives better, the absence of her presence for them was the most bitter aspect of her new reality. This moment was like a revelation to Marie in a world where fates were intertwined. The pain in her heart grew, realizing that her brother and sister were alone in their dismal cabin while she struggled to secure their future in the Earl's service. An inner cry of pain compelled her to act, Unable to bear the separation, she turned to the Count, feeling that this man might be able to change the course of her loved ones. With entreaty in her voice and bitter pain in her heart, she asked that her brother and sister might live with her in the servants' quarters. The Count, however, showing incredible kindness, resolutely set aside a whole separate spacious room for them. This gesture of the Count's generosity was a genuine source of surprise and gratitude to Marie. It opened the door to a new chapter of life for her brother and sister, tearing them away from the outdated past and opening to them the possibility of a true home in this mysterious and magical world. Marie's gratitude to the Count was boundless, like a blooming garden in her heart, where every flower was a manifestation of her gratitude. Deciding that the best way to repay kindness was to work hard and faithfully, she put even more energy into her work. Every stitch, every detail in the toys she created was an act of gratitude and an offering of blessing to the Count for the change in the lives of her brother and sister. Her hands now gave not only warmth to the children she met in this magical world, but also testified to her deep appreciation for the man who had opened new horizons for those she loved. After a while, Marie was faced with an unexpected dilemma that introduced a bit of unpredictability into her daily routine. The moment of changing baby Brielle's diaper turned out to be something ridiculous and touching at the same time. Marie, with tender concern in her eyes, tried to approach the small, peaceful infant. However, as if anticipating her every move, Brielle deftly crawled away, creating an innocent, playful display. Marie couldn't contain her laughter as she watched the baby close his eyes and laugh, being a cheerful participant in this fun process. In this way, the daily care of Brielle had a light touch of mischief, bringing cheerful moments and unexpected smiles into the ordinary. Marie, taking this unusual turn of events with joy and warmth in her heart, realized that even the simplest worries could turn into magical moments, reminding her how unique and unpredictable every detail of her new life was. Deftly maneuvering the bound bear in front of little Brielle, Marie was able to get his attention. The twinkle of joy in the child's eyes was like a ray of sunshine in the daylight when he saw the toy maneuvering through the air like a magical dance. Grinning, Marie continued the game like a wizard giving fun to a toddler. With each bounce and twirl of the bear, she carefully guided Brielle's attention to the magic of the pose, taking him into a world of play and fun. Through this magic, it was possible to change diapers, turning this routine process into a fun adventure. So in the daily care of little Brielle, Marie discovered that in love and warmth, given with humor and joy, lies an incredible power to change the ordinary. The little bear, bound by Marie's caring hands, became a kind of magical guide to the world of smiles and children's delight, filling their home with the light of tenderness and fun. Marie looked at little Brielle with fondness, noticing how fast time was flying by and how fast he was growing. It had been almost a year since she had met the little boy, and in every playful glance she saw not only his current state, but also the memories of him growing into a tiny ball of happiness. Despite this lovely picture, however, her thoughts still crossed with the dark question of the past. The worry about who could have ordered the original Marie to kill this innocent infant continued to haunt her like a ghost. In moments of silence, when Brielle was engaged in his little games, Marie felt the shadow of an unknown past weighing on her heart. The question of why and how she had come to be in this strange world remained an unresolved puzzle that kept her from fully immersing herself in the joy of the moment with her baby. After a while, the Count's magic words rang out in their house as he read a dragon tale to Brielle. The little boy, sitting on the Count's lap, listened to every word, his eyes sparkling with delight and wonder. The tale of great dragons, of adventure and magic, of touching the magic world of words, all this was for Brielle something incredibly fascinating. Beside them was Marie, her heart touched by the peaceful picture. The Count, immersed in a story, and Brielle, all delighted, seated on his lap. Her propitiation before those so dear to her was like an affectionate slow flame, giving the moment a peculiar warmth. In this magical embrace of a story about dragons and a fantasy world, Marie saw not only the joy of the baby, but also her own joy that they could create such moments of happiness together. Thus passed an evening filled with the wonders of storytelling, in the arms of a family who, despite all the mysteries of the past, found happiness in every moment together. When the time came for Marie to temporarily leave for the transportation of her belongings, little Brielle expressed her reluctance to part with her, shying and clenching in her arms. The child's excitement was understandable, and the servants, who politely offered their assistance, carefully watched over the infant. Brielle, however, seemed to prefer to remain out of anyone's arms, and the servants were at an impasse. Suddenly, the Count, with his amazing sensitivity, responded to the servant's request and took the baby in his arms. Like a miracle, Brielle, who had initially held back his emotions, began to gradually relax in the Count's arms. The Count, with a slight smile, gently talked to the baby, creating an atmosphere of trust and comfort. The Count and Brielle grew closer with each passing minute, as if they could recognize each other without words. This moment of intimacy, created by the unexpected rapprochement, was inexpressibly precious to them both. In the Count's arms, little Brielle found not only comfort, but also a new friend, opening his generous, childlike world to a man who seemed to know how to listen to the silence of children's hearts. At first, Earl accepted the responsibility of caring for the baby with joy and warmth. However, after only half an hour, he began to realize that he had signed up for a veritable turbulent carnival of energy. Brielle proved to be a hyperactive whirlwind that could hardly be slowed down. The Count, though somewhat fatigued by this unexpected storm of energy, maintained his majesty as he tried to develop games that encouraged active interaction. He would organize little races around the room, creating fun sounds, trying to catch the baby's rhythm. However, it was as if Brielle embodied the very essence of the child's energy. His liveliness knew no bounds. Brielle's sudden whirlwind brought with it disorder, as the toddler, with unbridled energy, began throwing books from the shelves like a small tornado in a world of words. The Count, feeling his patience being tested, ordered the toddler to stop, sounding the tone of an aristocrat like a high-ranking official. However, like a wave of opposition, Brielle, devoid of any notion of rank and orders, stoically continued his artistic work, delving deeper into the joy of scattered pages and book mirages. The Count, in spite of his high status, was powerless against the child's indomitable restlessness. There was a certain comic helplessness in his stern tone as he, like a respectable aristocrat, faced the children's freedom in bewilderment. At that moment, the books, like fairies of chaos, became the personification of a cheerful rebellion that even the Count himself could not suppress. Brielle's sudden scream pierced the air, breaking the silence of the room after his play with the books. Marie, greeted by this unexpected sound, came back in a panic, fearing that something serious had happened. The Count, with the baby in his arms, met her gaze with an expression of alarm and uncertainty. Brielle, still clutching the last defeated book, was a sight full of contradictions. His eyes reflected an irrepressible, feverish energy, and at the same time, his face glowed with fascination. Once in the Count's arms, the boy continued to gaze rapturously at the pages as if they had come to life. The Count, with the medical experience of a highly ranked aristocrat, decided that Brielle's agitation might have been caused by fever. He, unable to keep his cool in such an unusual situation, tried to find measures by attempting to alleviate the infant's condition. Looking at Brielle's enthusiastic gaze, Marie suddenly realized that the Count was probably mistaken in mistaking the boy's enthusiasm for a sign of fever. As she watched him gazing intently at the pages of the book, she decided to do a little introspection. Smiling quietly, she hugged the baby and affectionately told the Count that everything was all right and that her meeting with Brielle was nothing serious. Her words embarrassed the Earl, who felt a little uncomfortable being in a situation where his authority and sensitivity were being questioned. Marie, being a source of reassurance and understanding, managed to convey to the Count that it was important not only to look after the physical health, but also to understand the inner world of children. In this moment of their unusual family, it became clear that care and love can manifest themselves in the most unexpected forms, and that even high-ranking aristocrats can be misunderstood by children's joy. The Count, with remorse in his gaze, regularly sat beside Brielle, turning the pages of magical tales. Two worlds struggled within him, the one he had created in reality and the one he had opened before the infant. Marie, standing in the shadows, watched every moment carefully, every page turning. Evening after evening, the words about dragons and magic became a kind of guidepost in the Count's soul. He sought to compensate for his abrupt exit by trying to create a magical world for Brielle, full of warmth and safety. Storms of uncertainty and frustration rumbled within him, but he was willing to go along to meet the changes. Marie, watching this transformation, felt her resolve strengthen. She realized that the influence she had on the Count and Brielle could not only change the course of the story, but could also give the world an incredible meaning. Sparks of determination flashed in her eyes. Despite her past trials, she was ready to protect her charges from the fate that the pages of the books had painted for them. The mystery enveloping the death of Brielle's parents was like an invisible fog that only slightly dispersed before anxious gazes. Marie could feel the weight of the unsolved mystery in the air, like a shroud ghostly touching every breath in the castle. Brielle, as an infant, could not solve the riddle of his origins, but his attentive eyes sometimes wandered in search of answers. Marie, immersed in her mission to protect Brielle, felt every question he asked become a pang of doubt weighing down on her shoulders. Her eyes reflected her determination to shed light on this darkness, to unravel the mystery that weaved so thickly around the castle. She knew that not everything in this story was as it was written in the book, and that every detail could change Brielle's fate. Brielle's innocent sneeze echoed through the castle hall as if it had awakened all the dead corners of the past. The Count looked at the infant with a note of concern in his eyes, as if this moment had pulled him out of the shadows of dark memories. Marie, standing aside, watched the scene, realizing that even the smallest sound could chip away a piece of the Count's carefully constructed castle of memories. Brielle's sneeze was a reminder of how the carriage had shattered, despite the Count's careful attempts to save his family. In that brief moment of the sound of the Count's traumatized nerves, Marie discerned the darkness that now shadowed his every action. It was the darkness left in the wake of his loss, a darkness he had tried in vain to dispel by wrapping himself in fantasies and fairy tales for Brielle. Marie, feeling the heaviness of the air, realized that Brielle's sneeze was a symbol of unspoken fears and pain that carried through time. She was to be not only protector, but healer as well, to heal the wounds on the Count's soul that were imprinted in every look and every fleeting moment of weakness. In that moment, she resolutely directed her steps forward, ready to erase the traces of the past and create a new path for Brielle and his unfortunate guardian. The maid, with a frightened look, held the infant in her arms, howling hysterically, as if his whole soul was shuddering from something indefinable. Marie, hearing this howl, immediately rushed towards them, realizing that something was crumbling inside of Brielle. Those hysterical cries were like an echo of what was hidden deep in his soul. The maid said with a tremor in her voice. As soon as Marie stepped back, the world in the maid's hands turned into a storm of emotions. Marie took Brielle in her arms and felt his little body shiver under her touch. The infant's eyes glistened with tears, incomprehensible fears and an unwillingness to let go of that cry inside. In that moment, Marie sensed that even in the quietest corners of Brielle's soul, something lurked that needed attention and care. She stood there, in the arms of a worried infant, realizing that her task included not only creating a magical world around her, but also addressing those sore spots from the past. This incident was a reminder that the forces within Brielle were awakening, and Marie was ready to face them head-on, to find a way to heal the wounds hidden in the very depths of his soul. Brielle, suddenly finding Marie's gaze, transformed his frightened expression into a delighted smile, as if meeting her was the best moment in his world. The smile, like a ray of light, awakened within him the joy that could only be felt in moments of true comfort and security. Marie, with the sensitivity of a nurse, took Brielle in her arms, as if gathering in her embrace all his tenderness and trust. The maid, exhausted by the baby's incessant crying, rested in relief when he was finally in Marie's arms. Now, cradled in his new guardian's arms, Brielle was calming down, as if he realized that she was a caring angel created to protect him from the storms of his own soul. Marie, holding the baby, felt in her hands not only a fragment of his past, but also a hope for a bright future. In that moment, she realized that her role in this extraordinary tale was not only to prevent disaster, but also to give warmth and security to those whose paths crossed with her own. After all, sometimes one moment of attention and care can turn a dark corner into a bright chapter in the book of life. Marie gently laid Brielle in his cozy crib, where each blanket seemed to be a magical blanket capable of cradling the baby with care. Smiling at the infant's stubbornness, she gently ran her palm through his soft hair as if touching something priceless. "Oh, how stubborn you've become," whispered Marie with a smile, looking at the peaceful features of Brielle's face. In that moment, she felt something magical happen, a moment of tenderness that wove past and future into one coherent picture. After Marie's affectionate words, she gently fixed her gaze on Brielle and prepared to perform the next act of care. "Come on, my little daredevil. It's time for a diaper change," she said, reaching for the necessary supplies. Her words were filled not only with care, but with a love that turned every moment of care into a special ritual of care and attention. This unexpected moment took Marie by surprise, as if a candle of uncertainty had suddenly been lit in the room. Brielle's eyes widened, as if opening a new world, and Marie's attention was caught. She caught the little one's gaze, filled with uncertainty, as if in that brief moment he was trying to discern not only her appearance, but also the secrets of her soul. And then, like the music of a new chapter, came the inept pronunciation of her name, Molly. Marie was inwardly seized by a feeling of warmth, as if the name carried something special. She smiled, reaffirming her role as guardian and protector in this world of magic and mystery. Marie's confusion was like a gentle breeze blowing suddenly, despite all her inner peace. She felt the thread of their bond grow even stronger when Brielle's eyes spoke her name again, Molly. It was like the gentle touch of childhood that, like magic, dissolved all doubts and anxious thoughts within her. Brielle repeated her name again, as if he were testing it for taste, as if he were convinced of its peculiarity. Marie, overcome with excitement, cradled the baby gently in her arms. Her embrace was like a sanctuary where she could forget all uncertainties and just be in the moment. She felt the warmth of his body, as if in every breath he took, a new star was lit, shining in their shared sky. "You called me right, my little friend," Marie whispered, as if answering the unspoken question in his eyes. That moment became like an affectionate melody that intertwined their destinies, giving new meaning to every look and touch. Brielle, that precious baby boy, became not just a caregiver for Marie, but a luminary in her own story. His touch, his smile, and the first words he spoke were not only the key to their mutual bond, but also the reason she found meaning in each day that followed. His touch, his smile, and the first words he spoke were not only the key to their mutual connection, but also the reason she found meaning in each day that followed. Ellie entered the room, breaking the quiet atmosphere of care and peace. Brielle's gaze was absorbed in the creation of his little pyramid of cups, and his attention was so firmly fixed on it that he didn't even notice Ellie enter. Marie, noticing Allie's arrival, smiled, conveying a look of favor and welcome. Ellie, in turn, nodded and let the moment go unspoken, not intruding into Brielle's playful world. She became an invisible observer of this little corner of happiness where the child, like a wizard, was creating his own little miracles. In that moment, the room was filled with warmth and serenity, as if the clock had slowed to give way to a simple but important moment of being. Ellie, slowing her steps, realized that it was moments like this that made their extraordinary family whole and full of magic, even in the most mundane moments of play and creativity. Suddenly, Ellie pouted, sensing that Brielle was completely absorbed in his amusing game and paying no attention to her. A sudden burst of jealousy made her spit in frustration right on his tiny pyramid of cups, scattering them in all directions. Brielle's face reflected the indescribable shock and disappointment that froze his childish soul for a moment. Ellie, realizing her rash act, remained standing, her gaze burning the air. The only sounds in the silence of the room were the crumbling of glasses, like echoes of broken dreams. Marie, standing back, felt an inner unease, recognizing that this event would be a watershed in their relationship, requiring wisdom and patience to restore order to their magical world. Brielle, still not believing what had happened, stared at the wreckage of his carefully constructed pyramid. His trust was broken, and his eyes reflected the pain and misunderstanding of what had happened. Marie, understandingly, directed her gaze back and forth between Ellie and the little boy, knowing that she had a difficult task ahead of her to restore not only the shattered cups, but also the trust and serenity in their magical home. Ellie, realizing the magnitude of her act, quickly backed away, expressing a sincere apology. A tearful Brielle, feeling supported and cared for, faced the excitement that was slowly subsiding under the influence of her guardian's tears and touch. Marie, in response to all that had happened, smiled, seeing this not just as a coping mechanism, but as an opportunity for the children to truly have fun together. In that moment, despite the fleeting adversity, laughter and joy resounded once again in their magical home. Marie, penetrating with her gaze inside every heart in this small but so important world, saw that even in the most difficult moments, they found a way to transform trials into opportunities for bonding and fun. Thus, with each new step and obstacle passed, their cozy family only grew stronger, filled with the warmth of understanding and support. Marie, attentive to the needs of her charges, brought them a delicious dinner prepared with love. Serving the pies, she announced with a smile that today's dinner could even be eaten with the hands. This unexpected break in the routine brought a touch of informality and joy to their home. Ellie, always thoughtful and concerned about safety, expressed her fears that the pies might be too hot. Even so, her friendliness and appetite won out. She took one of the pies. This moment was another step towards opening up their interaction, giving them not only delicious culinary delights, but also happy memories that will warm them in the future. Ellie, showing her caring and attentiveness, cooled the hot cake despite her own misgivings. Her hands were like magic. They created a safe and comfortable moment for little Brielle. With an affectionate smile, she handed him the brownie, like a gift filled not only with flavor, but with care. Brielle took the pie and looked at Ellie with gratitude, as if at that moment a non-verbal connection full of trust and understanding had been established between them. Marie, watching this touching picture, felt how these small gestures created invisible but strong threads of mutual care and friendship in their cozy home. In this way, an ordinary dinner turned into a whole ritual of caring, making every moment special in their extraordinary family journey. Ellie grinned and decided to indulge in another pie, but when she stretched out her hand, she felt that it was still too hot. Marie, always willing to help and care, offered to blow on the pie to make it usable. However, with an affirmative shake of her head, Allie decided to take the initiative and said she could do it herself. This moment was another demonstration of Ellie's independence in their unusual family circle. She, like a true little heroine, solved her own problems, even if it involved the simple but important task of cooling the cake. Marie, watching this scene, felt their interaction growing closer and more intense, creating a warm atmosphere of a home full of care and understanding. Marie, watching her younger sister, Ellie, noticed the dreams and aspirations bubbling in her eyes. Ellie's gaze was filled with awe and incredible admiration as she looked at her older sister, Marie. She obviously aspired to be like her, to learn from her experiences and shine the same light that illuminated her older sister. And so, as Ellie held the hot cake in her hands, Marie, like a caring sister, offered to trade her for a cooler version. It was more than a simple gesture of kindness. Marie realized that in this moment she could give her sister not only the brownie, but also a piece of her attention and care. Brielle's sudden utterance of Ellie's name kind of shook the world around him. It was an unusual twist in the plot that startled everyone in the vicinity. Marie, retaining memories of her previous life, perceived the event as a mystery, contrary to the expected scenario. After a while, Marie and Ellie, faced with an unexpected plot development, decided together what they would do in this world where magic and reality were intertwined in surprising patterns. This moment became a kind of pause in the narrative, when the characters, finding themselves outside the preordained scenario, began to search for their own story. Meanwhile, their brother, hidden in the corner, watched them sadly through the door slit. His eyes expressed longing and misunderstanding at the unexpected events that contradicted the usual order of this wonderful world. As he watched the sisters, he saw how they, under Marie's influence, were beginning to make changes in the established scenario, and it gave him mixed feelings. The idea of bringing something to drink at this moment suddenly dawned on Marie as a kind of frozen frame in their unusual scenario. Stepping toward the door, she was intent on interrupting Barry's suspicious observation that he wasn't even aware of it. Outside the door, she met her brother, and his apology was in the air like invisible strings of drama carried through unexpected action. "Barry, don't worry," Marie smiled at him, infusing the words with notes of cheerfulness and understanding. The impatient flicker of apology in Barry's eyes was replaced by some amazement. His sister was suggesting that he not dig through the apology, but give in to the flow of an unknown plot. Instead of loading the situation heavily, Marie, good-naturedly eyeing her brother, offered to let him play with the infant Brielle. It was like an offer to become part of that marvelous world that seemed to be just beginning to take shape from the mosaic fragments of their new reality. In this way, she invited Barry to embark on this unexpected but exciting journey of influencing the plot and changing the destiny that had been set. Barry, meeting his sister's gaze, raised his eyebrows with a smile and assured her that the evening promised to be an exciting one for all. Marie, sitting next to him, couldn't help but stare, watching her brother cheerfully coax Ellie, genuinely inviting her to join in the game with little Brielle, who, by the way, had just celebrated his 8 months. The moment Ellie, laughing, agrees to play with the youngest member of the family, a light atmosphere of fun and tenderness spreads in the room. Marie couldn't help but feel how these moments brought them all even closer together. Her eyes reflected her joy at seeing Brielle become the center of attention. Silently, but with such brightness, family ties were strengthened, creating an enduring image of unity. Playing with the baby became a kind of symbol of family harmony, filling the evening with a special warmth and understanding. In these moments, Marie realized that it is moments like these that make life a real treasure, and family an integral part of that treasure. Marie smiled softly as she left the room in search of drinks, leaving behind an atmosphere of family warmth. At this time, Barry, having realized his idea, invited little Brielle's attention by offering him a game of ball. With a cheerful wink to Ellie, he aimed to make the evening even more memorable for the whole family. Brielle, blinking her bright eyes, happily joined in the game, forgetting the rest of the world around her. The ball became a magical bridge, connecting generations in a joyful game. Barry, willingly accompanying the baby on this fun adventure, not only created a storm of fun around him, but also diverted Brielle's attention away from Ellie, giving his sister a chance to really relax and enjoy the moment. In this carousel of joy and play, each family member found his or her place, and the interaction between them seemed like a magical dance where time lost its meaning. And when Marie returned with the drinks, she found a cheerful picture. Her brother, sister, and little Brielle together, creating a moment of family happiness, filling the evening with the light of the rainbow and the warmth of intimacy.